So I'm sitting out here feeding this tank, and I'm checking for eggs for the synodontis Petricola, and I see this little tiny freaking ferocious thing come out of nowhere and snag a bloodworm. Daffodils, lemons, and Petricola. No, I didn't suddenly start getting into plants. These are some Lake Tanganyika Cichlids that I've been hiding from you guys for a while. Welcome to the fish cave. That's right, we keep cichlids here too. Believe it or not, the fish that got me back into the hobby was an African cichlid, my 55-gallon Mbuna tank. I've actually had this tank set up for a while, and I've always kind of glazed over it in the tours and such. It feels like it hasn't been that long, but it's been over 6 months, actually coming up to a year, that we rehomed our big buddy Bert, the Red Devil, and turned the tank over to this 125 Lake Tanganyika community. As we get ready to upgrade the fish cave to 2.0, I got a special place for some of these fish. There's already some breeding going on in this tank, believe it or not. We have some eggs that I pulled in here, but we had some babies survive from previous batches. The tank itself has been set up for well over 2 years since we found it in a $100 fine. You could see that video. I'll link it in the description down below. It's home currently to 3 different species, actually technically 4. 3 are from Lake Tanganyika, and then I also have some super red bristlenose plecos that I'll talk about briefly in a little bit in here. But we're looking at right now is some Locust Daffodil. So they're similar to a Bashardi, but they're essentially have a little more color to them. These are of breeding size. These fish have not bred for me that I've seen. At least no babies have survived. I thought they did, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but it ended up being something else. But as you can see here, I believe this to be a female. I'm not the best at sexing them, but the males, I believe, get a little bit more of a little bit of a nuchal hump, or at least a more pronounced head over here. As you can see, there's some nice yellow and blue accent on his cheek. He has some stripes on his cheek. There's another male, what I believe to be a male right there. And it's kind of like a grayish body. Lake Tanganyika cichlids are not known for their color. They're known for being a little more difficult to keep than your cichlids like your Mbuna peacocks and haps from Lake Malawi. I have not found that to be the case. If you're looking at about a max size fish, they're not a huge cichlid, still considered a dwarf species. They're from the same lake as the shell dwellers, as well as Frontosa. So there's some larger species as well as some smaller species, but these are still considered on the smaller side. I'd say maxing out 3-4 inches. And they can be territorial like any cichlid, but I haven't found them to be necessarily overly aggressive. You want to keep lots of rocks and hides and caves, just like most African cichlids. I haven't found the need to necessarily fully overstock this tank. There are not a ton of fish in this 125-gallon tank. There's about a colony of 8 of these daffodil cichlids. And the other mid-swimming fish in this tank is a leleupi. The lemon cichlid is a stunning cichlid in my opinion. It's one of the most colorful cichlids from Lake Tanganyika. Once again, Lake Tanganyika is not known for their most colorful cichlids. These guys get about the same size, once again, more of a dwarf cichlid. Depending on the collection point and the strain of these, there can be a varying color. I'm lucky enough to have this bright kind of yellowish color. Some get more of an orange. Some strains can be kind of darker or mottled. I do have 1 or 2 fish in the tank that seem to kind of display that darker coloration. I believe those to be kind of a subdominant male, but I'm not 100% sure. If you know more about these fish than I, which is not that difficult, let me know down in the comments below. I'm still fairly new to these fish, and I always enjoy learning, and definitely want to give a little more focus on these fish moving forward, so appreciate any input. So we've talked about the 2 species, which have both came from bioaquatics. Not only did these 2 species come from bioaquatics, the 3rd species from Lake Tanganyika also came from bioaquatics, and he breeds all of these fish. He's not someone who imports a lot of fish. He does import and sell some fish, but most of the fish he's selling, including these, are bred by him, and he's a one-man band. So big kudos to Andres over at Bioaquatics. The 3rd species is these synodontis Petricola or lucipinnis. I'm not going to get into the debate between the differences between Petricola and lucipinnis. They are, like I said, a catfish that is native to the same lake in Africa, Lake Tanganyika. This is the second time I've had these fish. I put out a video, it's been a year now. I did a water change. This is the first kind of crisis I've had. I've only had a few, luckily. I killed a bunch of calico plecos the end of last year. And then, like I said, previously I bought a batch of these from Andres and I did a water change. At the time, I thought the water was too hot, but in retrospect, I think I might have forgot to add dechlorinator or not enough. Regardless, I killed off all but one of the Petricola at the time. This is my second batch, and I'm happy to announce that this is a fish that has been breeding in this tank. Big shout out to Ron over at Friday's Fish Facts, who I've been able to kind of share some tips with. He has a colony that's been breeding for him as well. So I'm wishing him the best of luck raising, because as all fish breeders know, getting fish to spawn is easy. Getting the fry to raise up and doing it on command is the hard part. So obviously getting eggs is always fantastic. And I've been lucky enough to have eggs and get them to wigglers once with the Petricola, but I unfortunately lost them. These things are tiny, microscopic. There's a few dozen eggs in here. I think maybe 10 have hatched so far, but excited to try my hand at working with these. So I'm going to attempt that again. And there are currently eggs, if I back up, there are currently eggs in this breeder box hang-on style, as well as in this methylene blue from the leleupi. So my goal is to breed the leleupi regularly. As you can see by the little baby leleupi, this is evidence that we have bred these leleupi in the tank, or at least they've spawned in the tank. I noticed two babies before I noticed any eggs of any species, and the babies did not have any color at the time, so I believe them to be the Daffodil. They look more the gray color. Here feeding this tank, holy crap. So I'm sitting out here feeding this tank, and I'm checking for eggs for the synodontis Petricola, and I see this little tiny freaking ferocious thing come out of nowhere and snag a bloodworm. The Daffodil Cichlids freaking bred. I have no idea where. I have no idea how many there are. I'm ecstatic. This is awesome. Wasn't planning on this. Wasn't thinking they'd breed in here. But we have at least one little baby that's tearing through some bloodworms. Awesome. Got a leleupi, or the lemon cichlid, and she is fanning eggs. I believe it's the female that fans the eggs. Not gonna lie, I have no idea. I was not expecting these guys to be sexually mature for like another year. I read that they took a little longer. So I did some more investigating since we found a little baby Daffodil Cichlid. And I found another little cichlid or something swimming over here next to this leleupi. And I'm thinking, okay, these baby leleupi? And I was like, well, those are baby leleupi, or about to be. So I don't know what's going on in this tank. We got leleupi eggs. This one's guarding. That's a baby Daffodil Cichlid, like the one we saw on the other side of the tank. Or it's a baby leleupi. I'm not sure if these guys color up. I'm trying to figure out what the heck's going on in these tanks. The only thing I switched it up is I've been feeding, and I have no idea if this is the reason, but I have been feeding the extreme foods lately. I've been feeding these foods, and it's been, I don't know, a month, 6 weeks since I've been feeding the foods, and we see babies. Maybe correlation, maybe coincidence, not sure, but really excited. So another quick update on the 125 situation. It is the next morning, and it looks like the leleupi eggs are gone. So I'm not sure if they weren't viable or if the mama here ended up eating them all. I'm pretty sure that those little babies, the one that's hanging out over here and over there, are Daffodil Cichlids. These cichlids right there. But those have definitely bred. The leleupi are trying to breed, and I'm trying to breed the catfish. Those catfish, I'm trying to breed those with those pots. So definitely some breeding going on in here. Just got to get it all squared away. Drop me a comment if you know maybe the best way to breed these leleupi. I got some caves and stuff in here, but they're choosing to just go in a corner. Maybe add some PVC or something and give it a more tight space, because I'm not sure if they would get eaten by themselves because they were fungusing, or by other fish maybe sneaking in, doing a sneak attack. But as you can see, it's clear that we have that baby is yellow. The second baby is still kind of a gray color, So I'm pretty sure based on the fin shape, it is also a leleupi and not a daffodil. As you can see, the daffodil have more of a split fan tail compared to the leleupi, which have more of a solid tail. But I've seen the eggs. I saw eggs twice since, and then both times they got eaten. Not a surprise because, like I said, we have other cichlids, we have these catfish, and we also have that fourth species I was talking about, the bristlenose pleco. So I'm not sure who got to those eggs. She's been laying them in a really bad spot behind that rock, kind of just on the back wall of the aquarium with not a lot of defense. There's a cave over here, there's another cave back there, but for whatever reason, they picked that spot. My goal is in Fish Cave 2.0, once we get that done here in a few weeks, I'm gonna move a pair or a small group of them into a tank in the rack system with some specific caves, and hopefully they get it done that way, because these are supposedly good parents and will raise the babies just like most cichlids will. The substrate in here is nothing special. This is just a mix of some substrates from other tanks I had. This is just an inert gravel, kind of black and white inert gravel that I mixed in. There is also some sprinkled some Carib Sea substrate that I had in the 55-gallon tank. I don't believe there to be enough to really make a difference. There is some in here, as you can see, it's finer, so it sank down to the bottom. But like I said, there's not a ton in here, so I don't believe it to be buffering the water that much. And I don't do a ton of water changes on this tank. It is one of the tanks that I do a water change probably once a month on this tank. Once again, it's not heavily stocked, in my opinion, with about, like I said, there's about 8 of these daffodil, another 8 leleupi, a colony of about 10 synodontis catfish in this 125-gallon tank. I have a Zis biofilter that runs on this tank, as well as a sponge filter that normally is running, but I have that hose. Everything runs off of the linear air piston pump. So I have 2 lines running to this tank. This one's going to the Zis currently. This one usually goes to that sponge filter, but right now it is going towards this hang-on breeder box. And then the main filtration for this tank, and this is one of only a few I run out here in the fish cave. This is an AquaClear 110. I don't do canisters anymore, and I only run a few hang-on backs, and my preferred is this AquaClear 110. Big shout out to Aquarium Co-op for this pre-filter, as well as this Zis Bio filter. I prefer the Zis Bio filter over the sponge filter. As you can see, this sponge filter was in here when we had a common pleco. See how it's all chunked up? This Bio filter obviously can't happen to that filter. It's a pretty simple setup in my opinion. This tank does not run a heater, so it has been as high as 85 and as low as 65, 70 over the last couple years with no issues. Like I said, I'm always trying to push the limits within reason and see. I think that allows me to learn for myself through trial and error, as well as have and breed a fish that is more sustainable, just like it would be in natural conditions in nature. I'm really excited to not only keep these fish, but potentially breed all 3 of these Lake Tanganyika Cichlids. I know it's possible. There's already 2 that are actively laying eggs. We got some wigglers, like I said, the leleupi, and the daffodil. I gotta just put them in a separate tank. And we have eggs from the Petricola, just have to collect them more regularly. Big shout out, I already shouted out Ron, but big shout out to Greg Sage over at Select Aquatics. I have been watching his videos and actually had a little bit of email exchange with him about potentially breeding them. So big thank you, can't thank them enough for sharing their knowledge with me, so that, you know, we can potentially get these fish to be bred more and offered in the hobby, because they're not cheap and they're not bred by that many people. If you have a favorite Lake Tanganyika cichlid, let me know in the comments down below. If you want to check out some more tank by tanks, you could do so right there. More wild fish tank antics right there. As always, stay positive and stay passionate.